The meeting, and welcome to Gary to see your smile and face here, and Bruce in captivity. You could have done this job on remote control. Anyhow, so welcome and apologies. The only one I've got at the moment is Robin. Yes. And called that for us to be very good. And we have no one in the public forum. With the agenda, it's just a change of items where item 2.1, which is the proposed audit fees, will take place after 4.1, which is got a lot of paper, which is the Lgfa funding. Any conflicts of interest? Being none, we'll move on to a minutes for confirmation.
I'll move.
I'll second.
And John. Very good. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? It's carried. Righto, so that brings us to our first one, which is the risk report with Paku on page 16 of our forward paper. Morning, Paku.
Good evening.
We'll take this report as being read, Paku, and what want to see highlights and making questions, please.
Sure. So, Chair, we undertook the risk workshop, as you all, most of the majority of you attended. We continue to monitor our key operational risk, and we also undertook a legislative compliance review to finish for the 2020-21 year. There's some keynotes that I just want to talk to before we stick off and be clear about. We are partway through a deep dive, a strategic risk assessment, so we're not actually presenting one of those today. But at the risk workshop, we were asked to query the legislative, a legislative review, which we've done, just to give some assurance that that particular strategic risk would be able to come off the strategic list. And we will be presenting 2 deep dive assessments at the next meeting. Again, we've got now got 28 total corporate risks, which include 19 operational risks and 9 strategic risks. These are the new ones, or part of them are some new strategic risks here. A couple of other things just to clarify. We have a risk improvement plan, which has been asked to, I've been asked to give an update on that. Now, I'm going to do that 6 monthly, and that will be presented at the next meeting. Yeah, so that's where we're at with that. So, any questions in regards to the
Anyone, any questions of Paku topics?
Yes. Yeah, good morning, Pax. I can see the back of your head, which and you can't see me, so it's good to be there. Hey, look, Paku, thank you for this. Just a really key question for me is one of the things that obviously we have a chance to discuss at the moment is actually, are there any trends in these strategic risks? While I appreciate we're not doing a deep dive, are there any of these that give you cause for worry at the moment as our risk manager? Either strategic or indeed the operational risk?
Through the Chair, no, not at this point in time. There isn't anything there that I would be concerned with. Really, it's just keeping an eye across them and continuing to have the risk dialogue at the leadership operational meetings and throughout the organisation, really.
Thank you.
Just one question, perhaps Rob might be able to answer, and it's the Sugarloaf project set there. It's now still rated as low. Do you know if we've got the fast track proceeding in yet or not? Did that go in like it's supposed to expand?
So they're just working through some final detail.
Yeah.
Before that proceeds to the next step. So
It's imminent, it's not gone through yet, but it is, I was told 2 weeks ago
Yeah.
it would be launched.
That's
And
right,
I
that's
have
right.
full confirmation it has been launched.
Neither do I.
I will follow up.
I
on
just think they're timing things off with Materiality.
Yeah, that was the last thing we were trying to
Yeah, I think that's still in train.
get the train. Okay.
There is one risk in relation to what you raised, Bruce, and I don't want to depress the room because it's stuff that we all hear every single day about feeling frazzled and behaviours both within and externally with our stakeholders and our customers. We are having to put an awful lot of focus into our staff to keep the place held together because there is a general sense within New Zealand, and I wouldn't be surprised more globally, that everybody is frazzled and over it.
Yeah.
And everybody is losing patience and displaying bad behaviours, not because they're nasty people, it's just I think everybody feels in that space. And so we do have to put more effort into that, and we're trying really hard, but it doesn't stop these little blips of bad behaviour occurring. So that is something that, from my perspective, I do worry about because it's new, it's still ongoing, and we just don't seem to know when it's going to end. And it's tough on people.
I've just got to endorse that. I think while I think it's general right throughout the population, but in our situation, we need to be mindful of how that's affecting the staff. And I think it just needs to make sure that we're constantly more considerate of others in that respect. Hey, but
It's ongoing, isn't it? Because the reforms, you know, they've got a job or not.
just a clarification. So we're on 3.1
Yeah.
or 2.1. Which one are we doing?
3.1.
Okay, right, sorry, radio. So my question on 3.1 is that, what was the second resolution for 3.1? I mean, I can understand first resolution, so what was the second one? I'm looking at page 17 here where the resolution is.
Yeah.
You received the climate change matters, so we received the report. That's number one. And secondly, we've gone and reviewed the copies, so we have anything we don't know about, or we'd like further that.
You don't
Next time we ask Paco and he'll tell us.
Yeah, but we don't need that in a resolution.
Well, my understanding of risk is that it's our responsibility to have reviewed it fully and to understand our risks, because we have responsibilities. So that to me implies that we have asked questions that they've been responded to. I don't know if that's why you put it in, but that's why I think it's there.
I just think it's a bit odd, because it's stating out the obvious, I would have thought.
So I've got a question that might be directed to Rob. Is there any potential for the coastal marine precinct to be listed in here with the stuff that's sort of going on with that?
Good question. It could be. I mean, I do make that focus of my chief executive report at Nelson Committee, so we're not losing sight of that project.
Yeah.
In terms of a risk, yes, there is a risk in terms of its delivery for obvious reasons that have been reported, but yeah, I'm happy to include it if you.
Well, I think I was also thinking of the risk around, because people are going to, if in fact the recreational boat ramp side of it doesn't go ahead, then there's a risk of that the public will be saying, hang on, you said we're going to do this. So I'm just thinking reputational risk possible.
Yeah, look, that does exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it,
You know, I mean, that does exist. From my perspective, if we can get $8 million of government money and build something for the commercial sector, great. You know, I would herald that as a success. but there is a downside to
Yeah,
that story.
I mean, well, it was sold as a, it's for commercial but recreational as well. And I think people may look at it and go, oh, it's just being done for.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, just follow up on this. What's the risk in that project? If it takes a year to get it seen? Collision damage.
From what I understand at the moment, there is no risk around that. The PDU are very supportive of the resubmission of the fast track consent. Assuming that consent gets submitted by the end of October, which we've been told that it will be, then we should have the consent issued by the end of the year. Yeah. So it's not a drawn out consent process.
So really goes like that, and we lose money we've spent to get there, and
We've actually not spent any money from a rate perspective, so.
So that's, you know, just about to make that clear that this is not council ratepayer, this is not ratepayer funds, this is government funds.
Yeah, but obviously the longer it goes on, the more gap is going to exist between funding that we've been given.
Absolutely, it's intensely frustrating the time it's taken, but we are fortunate that the team did have a plan B for this sort of eventuality once we knew about those new wetland laws. So, you know, it's good that we can resubmit pretty quickly. And it's good that we still have that opportunity to do that. We're not being closed down because of the actions the team has taken. So, you know, from my perspective, I'm still very optimistic that we're making progress with that project. It will be a good outcome. And we'll do our best to, you know, focus on the positives, but acknowledge that there are some negatives with this process. But it's a major project, and external funding, which is always to be celebrated.
so it's what I'm hearing, that we don't need to put this on a risk register at this moment, or that we do need to put it on.
I'm comfortable if we do or we don't. If you and the election manager and Taylor wish it to be appearing on the risk register, I'm happy to put it.
Whilst acknowledging the risk, I think if we put that on, well, then the Tyro Escape Park is as risky, I'd say, as well. So it's about the level of the risk, I think, and whether the CEO's report is the right place for it, for the group to decide. But
Personally, I've included in the CEO's report because I wanted to elevate that to a healthy sort of environment rather than focusing on it purely from a risk committee perspective.
I'm comfortable.
We're all going to
I'll find something in there.
But we're all comfortable with that. Get to the end of this video, I think, and I'll move we receive this report. We're going to send it. And all those in favour?
Aye.
That's carried. Brings us to item 3.2. And I'll pass it over to you.
Through the chair, this report really just, we've had the meeting workshop which led to the 3 reviews that we have agreed to undertake over this time period. I am partway through ethics review, which includes conflicts of interest, protected disclosure, sensitive expenditure and purchase and credit card use. We are looking to deliver that to the next meeting. So that's the first internal audit that we'll undertake. Continue to monitor the closeout. Now these, just because of the sort of timing of this report, I've not been able to give you enough, as yet the updates in regards to the recommendations is at the 30th of September. So I can tell you that just we have updated, and some of the recommendations within this report have been completed. So this isn't a true reflection of completion of the recommendations, just an FYI here. And that's really it that I've got to report there.
I've got a question for Terry.
Yeah, just on the KPMG audit contract on contract management there, on number 1. It just says in the dialogue box that the extension of time required procurement policy be updated to reflect the required input of an insurance team member.
Can you just expand on that a bit?
Yes, so with our procurement process, it's really good to have, it's good to have an independent kind of view and person across it, just to cover on such things as, you know, people ensuring that conflicts of interest are disclosed, that the process is being followed fully correctly, rather than being at the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. They start during the whole process, so they're part of the procurement process for major procurements.
So that person's an external person, is it?
No, that's one of my team.
Thank you.
Yeah, so they're across the eyes across the procurement from start to go, rather than at the end going, well, did we do okay in that procurement? No, we didn't. Yes, we did. It's better to be the ambulance at the top of the cliff. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions about Martin? Bruce, do you got your hand up?
And it was in some extent just, so firstly, Paku, thank you very much for a very, very clear and open and honest, dare I say it, report. The contract, I was interested though in the procurement and contract stuff, and it may be that actually your opening comments that actually even since 30 September when you prepared this report, these have been moved on. What is the extent of the extension of time you need? And it's only because contracts, management and procurement, of course, are at the heart of most things that we do, and particularly in terms of the big capital programs. So what sort of time do you think you need to nail this, or does the organisation need to nail this?
Oh, look, I'm pretty comfortable that we'll be able to report back that these are completed, all these have been reviewed and completed, certainly at the next Risk and Assurance Committee meeting. So, you know, I can see a lot of these coming off altogether and these being put to bed. So I would say the next quarter is going to be, in fact, if we report, if I was able to rewrite this report again, I'd say that the majority of them have been completed, and I'm quite comfortable about that. So it's really just a matter of, you know, reporting that to you.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, look, no, that's fine. I don't want to, that's tremendous, Paku. And thanks for giving us the qualification in on the amount of time. It's only a matter of days rather than weeks. So that's fine. Thank you. Thanks, Tony.
Anyone else have any questions on this matter? If no questions, I'll move to receipt of the report that we have on the second. Mario, second that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. And now, moving to item 3.3 for the health and safety report.
So the health and safety report, really this is just an update of the activities that we've undertaken in this space, especially around our nasty 9 hazards, and some of the work that we've done in relation to our relationships across with external parties, etc. One of the things that we have done is I've reviewed on some of the work that we've undertaken, and I'm pleased that Rob brought this up in regards to staff health and wellbeing as a risk. So we did a lot of work in this space for COVID to make sure our staff their wellbeing was taken care of, a lot of messaging, etc. Following the latest Ministry of Health messaging, directing staff to wellbeing resources, which we've got a whole suite of those, and just encouraging team leaders and managers to be in touch with their staff and really have those conversations about are they okay and what do they need from them as leaders. So that's from a COVID response perspective. The other thing I wanted to raise just is we do have a health and safety 2-year plan. And I had made a commitment to provide a status update. I will do that every 6 months, an update on that 2-year plan. I have given our leadership, senior leadership team an update, but you'll get one as well to see that we're progressing, because this is one of our major risks. So at the next Audit and Risk Committee meeting, you'll get an update on the status of that, the delivery of that.
So in terms, sorry, I got over through chat. So in terms of that 2-year plan, the key focus from my perspective is that we achieve the sort of all that ACC audit partnership program level 2, which is probably the best practice still in today's health and safety environment. It's not going too far, but it's the best practice in terms of the prudence from a financial perspective of trying to achieve the measures that we need to achieve. So we're on a path, and we've started well, and we're on a path to reach that level within the next 6 years. So there's, and it's going to take 2 years, mainly because of the amount of background documentation you have to provide. So we're embedding stuff now that will lead to that 2-year compliance with that program. So we're doing a lot of work. 2 years sounds a long time now, but we need to build it up. It's almost a bit like the water reform, the water compliance stuff, is you need some certain data before you can demonstrate compliance, and that's what we're working on.
Oh, Gary.
Oh, thank you. I was just looking on page 29, the risks, and you talk about the, I hadn't heard this before, the nasty 9, I think it was, the hazards. For example, some of them have things written next to them, but for example, number 1, personal confrontation. Is anything to report on that, or is that just one thing that's going to be looked at?
Through the chair, each of these we do a bit, we incrementally progress a bit at a time, so to speak. So in the last report, Councillor, we did report on some of the stuff that we had done in this in regard to personal confrontation. So you're not necessarily going to get each one of these work progress in that quarter, but we will focus on what we can do. But there's always something that's that we've got on our plan to work on. It might just not necessarily be in this quarter's reporting.
Thank you.
So for clarity on that, a gap in that box doesn't mean that nothing's happened in the past or nothing is happening. It just means there's nothing to report in this quarter. I can think of a number of examples where personal confrontation has been an issue, particularly over the last few months, but we do have staff trained in how to deal with that type of situation. But again, in future quarters, we may be looking at how we can improve that, and then that will be something that we get reported.
Yeah, okay, just contractors included in this?
Yes.
So we've got a new contractor, recreational services. Have they popped up in any of this? Just asking how their performance is going, Brandon.
Not at this point in time. But yes, certainly any work that we do with our contractors, I mean, for example, is here the slip strips and falls barriers around the wastewater ponds, etc. That's managed by our contractors, so we're continually engaging with them.
Okay, and the other question was question 3 of the major incident summary that was happened at Thames-Coromandel when they had a bouncy castle and something like that. That's been quite a while. Is that not resolved yet? No, you see,
we've got a final closeout meeting with WorkSafe on next week. In fact,
so it's close to being resolved.
It's close to being coming to an end.
Okay.
We'll certainly.
So what about governance interaction?
In regards,
so we've got two arms to council to some extent. We've got an operational, and so this is really covering the operational side. But there is a governance interaction as well, which has an effect and an influence. So I just wondered how that's taken into account in the risk register.
and you're talking about your own personal health and safety, or is this
No,
to how you can?
How we affect the staff,
Yes, I mean that certainly that's a sort of reflective thing in regards to that. I understand what you're saying there, but
I've raised it before.
Yeah,
and I think we need to be constantly mindful of our own behaviours in relation to dealing with the operational arm of council, which is our staff. And so I just want to raise that again as an area of concern, and I see that there are occasions where that becomes a risk. And so we need to be mindful of that, and I don't think there's any wrong with being constantly reminded by having that identified as an item here as a part of your 9, which takes it to 10. I'm just putting that forward.
There's some cases that highlight this.
Pardon?
Is there an issue that should be raised, which you know about?
Oh, there's been a number of incidents where some behaviours can give rise to personal grievance. So I think that's an issue for us to be mindful of when we are interacting with staff.
I'm unaware of this, so.
Well, I'm not going to elucidate any further. We are in a public forum, remember?
Yeah.
And so I just think we need to be responsible and mindful of that. And I see that as another potential inclusion for the risk register for health and safety for operational science.
So I just don't follow this. So you want Haki to write these down and put these into the public forums to read?
No,
How are you going to report them?
just like they are.
Just like-
Just a number. Brings about, I agree with Sandra, it brings about an awareness theory.
Yeah.
It brings about awareness of our responsibilities. And instead of the nasty 9, it'll be 10. But I do think it belongs there.
So, just how does that, Bruce?
Because I think again, earlier on, Bruce, I highlighted the issue of staff well-being and general well-being from an individual perspective for everybody. I think it might be worthwhile including in the nasty 9 a well-being box. And I think that's where it probably resides, is making sure that we're all conscious of everybody's well-being. Single out any particular sector of our operation or anything. It's just be aware of it and have it on the risk register so that we can all be cognizant and think about that as one of our risks.
Thanks. Bruce, have you got something you'd like to add to that?
Look, I appreciate the point that you've made, Sandra, and yes, you're being very consistent with that. So, Rob, I again take on board your point. Look, I think if there are matters, Terry, from time to time, I think we should have a session within public excluded if we have to deal with that. And I think if there are aspects of, let's put it this way, our behaviour, which is inconsistent as governors, is inconsistent with good well-being with staff, we've got to enable Rob to have the chance to raise those issues with us if they arise. So that's a long way of coming back to, look, I agree with both Sandra and Rob. Let's get it on to, what are we going to call it, our terrible 10 now rather than our nasty 9? Let you get that one through, Paku. But I think we need to, as a committee, in particular, enable Rob in an appropriate part of the meeting to raise issues if this is a matter that's more than its generality at the moment. And particularly given Rob's greater picture that actually staff are stressed, and quite frankly, that's consistent with the rest of the sector. Rob, you've got to have all right to raise these things with us.
Okay, so with the addition of a text box with well-being, I want to go around that. Are we satisfied we dealt with this item? You okay with that?
Sorry,
Bruce.
So look, I just had one other question, which is probably just a techo one. Page, 30. Great to see doing on the site safety checks. Can I just check, was that Colville Road project being done under level 4 of the lockdown? Because that's what it suggests there in the paper. I thought we couldn't do work in the middle of level 4 unless it was probably emergency. And if so, how was it? Were we actually exempt or something?
Through the chair, Bruce Hinson here. No, so level 4, that site was just made safe and then they got off the road. But we got permission under level 3 to get back on there and get working. So it was one of a small number of sites. So we'll just tidy up, make it safe and get off the road under level 4.
Yeah, sorry, I must confess I'm having a bit of trouble hearing you guys in the back of the room, Bruce, so thank you. I was just trying to work out whether that was done under level 3 or level 4, and I couldn't quite understand your answer. Did you say it was done under level 3 exemption, under the conditions of level 3, not level 4?
Yeah, correct, level 3.
Yeah, I mean, all I wanted to do is to make certain that we don't have in our minutes the suggestion that we have been outside the law. So it should read level 3 is really what I'm trying to say, isn't it?
Through the chair, I just wanted to comment on the nasty 9, and I mooted the idea of councillors going out and actually having conversations with our staff, and the questions around how we're interacting. I think getting a greater understanding of what they experience will help you in relation to, you know, the personal confrontation, working at height. I think it'll give you a greater respect for the types of hazards. So just might go part way to answer your question around, you know, how am I interacting? What can I do in relation to making sure that the council support good health and safety practice, etc., with their staff. So, you know, that would support their conversation through the
Thank you.
Okay, we're happy that. Again, I'll move receipt of the report for the seconder, and Sandra, and all those in favour?
Aye.
Okay, I've just got one comment, but probably endorse what Bruce might have said otherwise, but I think for all of us, this work that's been going on and your watch in terms of risk assurance and health and safety, I think it's been significantly heightened in your organisation, and there's a fair bit of comfort knowing that there's yourself and your team over a lot of the areas where things can fall through the gaps from time to time. So from me, I see Bruce like said, convey our thanks for your effort on this. So we're significantly more advanced now than we were. So thank you to Puggy. We'll move on to item 4.1, which is the Lgfa funding annual report, and Don was pretty touristy on the front.
Good morning, everybody. I'll take the report as read. This is LGFA, as Councillor Fox has said, this is the Lgfa annual report, which we're required to present to you under your terms of reference, and also under the Lgfa's terms of reference as well. I just take it as read. It's a very good result for them. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
I'll just go one. So I see there's another council withdrawal from LGZ today, and a big one. Do we see any risk at all to the likes of the funding agreements and other things that are going on in LGZ for us?
But this is not that correction. This is Lgfa, not.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But given that most of the members, councils, that's where the funding is involved around. The big entities start to drop out of that, then is there any risk to anybody in terms of how much we can borrow, at what rate we can borrow? Because clearly, if another 3 or 4 big councils go, then you've got a significant number of shareholders in the outfit that actually change the financial structure.
So through the chair, this is a company that is owned by a shareholding council. So that's different to LGFA. Like they can't just pull out. They are shareholders, part owners of this,
Right.
of Lgfa. So yeah, I don't see that as being pulling out of LGNZ as being related to the shareholding in Lgfa.
That's so. Bruce, have you got a comment on that?
Yeah, if I could add to it, I'm trying to think of what are the incentives for a local authority to pull out of the Lgfa. I mean, we all got together under Lgfa because it was recognised that if local authorities clubbed together, they could get a better rate on the open market. So the fact that they are delivering a better rate makes it fairly compelling for councils to stay in. So I think the risk for Lgfa of local authorities pulling out is marginal. There are, well, I guess I know through Auckland, obviously, there are one or two large councils like Auckland which also access directly the debt markets, not just through Lgfa, but that's essentially to minimise their exposure solely to one counterparty, in this case Lgfa. And it's because, of course, we're sitting on about 12 or $13 billion of debt in Auckland. And the fact that half of that comes direct from the market is probably good for everybody concerned. So I think the incentive for pulling out of Lgfa is low at this stage. And look, obviously things will depend going forward. So I'm not. Yeah, I don't think it's a big risk, Tony.
Yeah, just a couple clarification really. Point 2, 5 new council members were added, bringing the total to 72. Are these new councils or new? I thought there was only 67 councils.
They're the new council members. So not every council in New Zealand is a shareholder or a guarantor in Lgfa. So that it's bringing other councils on board into the company.
Yeah, but isn't there 67 councils in New Zealand?
No, it's only those that
Only those that are joining
become
us.
shareholders of the
Well,
company.
these are 72.
Separate entities can
I think they, Yeah.
Regional, right? I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, now I just talking about the number. Okay.
You ask any questions of Don? If there isn't, again, I'll move the report, and if we have a second for that.
I'll second that.
Thanks, John. And all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you, Don.
Thank
We now move on to item 2.1.
Carl's not paid, student.
So we'll just hold that off until Carl dials on. Right, so we'll move to item 4.2, which is the draft annual report, which we have then given to receive. And as we mentioned yesterday, that report was embedded in the audit paper.
I'd just like to say that I think that's a fantastic way of doing it, instead of getting hundreds of pages that you can just put the link, and then at the meeting it's easy to follow. So to me, it's really useful to have that.
Yep.
Look, I've got a copy, but I left my own other copy at home. So, but there's a couple of typos that I picked up, so I need to get back to you on that.
I need to let us know. Right.
So, it's all right. I mean, the minor.
We need, the more I those, we can read, look at it, you can read and read and not pick everything
Yeah.
up. So the more eyes on it, the better.
They're not major, they're just minor.
Right. Questions? For Don, in respect to this report. Bruce, I see your hand waving frantically.
Yeah, sorry. This is. Look, I just want to make certain. We're talking about 4.2, aren't we? The draft annual report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah. Look, I have gone through it, and like you, Sandra, I've indicated to Donna that I have sort of the natural typos, editorial stuff that sits in there, and I'll separately offline go through those with her because it'll otherwise bore the rest of the committee. Look, I just really want to say well done. It's a pretty clean draft report, Donna, and I think on the whole reads well. The critical thing that I would ask a committee at this stage, Tony, is that particularly does the front part of the report feel like the year that we've had as governors? Because the front part is what gets read, if I can call it that way. And I just think it's just really to reflect on the fact that transparency through the annual report tends to be at a summary than anything else. So my question would be to all of us: does that feel like the year we've had? And that I might leave it as an open question, Tony. The second question I have is more broadly: are we happy with the financial result? Does it fit within our financial strategy? So while that's also looking slightly forward ahead, this is our chance to put the ruler under our financial results. Does it actually fit within our financial strategy? Because it does actually show what we've done through the course of the year and where actually our financial position and indeed the parameters in which we're operating under have landed us, and are we happy with those? So those are my two big questions. I've got comments on both actually, but I'll perhaps leave that for you to raise with the rest of the committee.
Okay, so what Bruce has said, really, he rather reads this, but does the front two pages give us an accurate snapshot of where we all believe that we are as council?
So you're referring to the activity highlights or to the actual introduction?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point, Sandra. I always pull a number out of the year and I say it's the first 6 pages, and I don't know where I've got that number from, but it's that sense that actually, let's remember one thing Donna and the team have to do after we've got this audited and adopted is they have to prepare a summary. And that summary is going to come from the front end primarily of the annual report. So it raises the question, back to my original point, Sandra, does the first bit that the public are going to read give a fair picture of how we've performed?
I think we're waiting for Bruce to make his comment.
Yeah, that's basically what Bruce is referring to as the introduction, which is up to page 8 of your report.
Well, I don't see this as how we performed, but what we've achieved. And is that your idea of? Is it just your phraseology there, Bruce? Because I think this is about what's being achieved. So, because the only comment we've made under solid waste is around the Whitianga transfer station replacement going forward, whereas solid waste is one of our more challenging activities.
Yeah.
So it's not about performance; that's about what we're going to be achieving in the forthcoming year.
Yeah,
so,
and there's nothing wrong with an annual report pointing out the challenges in the year ahead either. In fact, a good annual report would. So look, I don't want to make a meal of it, Sandra. I'm just wanting to leave that as a question, that one of the key things that we should be doing as a committee is being happy. As I say, that front end, I mean, admittedly, that's got the highlights. I've got no reason, in the overall financial performance, I've got no reason to believe it's not right. In fact, I think on the whole, it feels like the year, to the extent that I've dipped into Thames-Coromandel through the course of the year, which is reasonable. I'm really just asking, this is our chance, while this is still in a draft report, to say, yeah, that does look like the year that we've had. I don't see any big gremlins in what's here, but I'm just saying, let's check that, Sandra, that's all.
I mean, we're not, from my perspective through the chair, if I can just add some flavour to that, is I went through this and I actually had some questions about it. Like I've just asked Tony now, other groins of flexible they actually working, because we worked so hard over such a long period of time to get that into place. And I know that, you know, we're all conscious that it's there, and I just said, are they working? And Tony said, I think they're working. Well, in my mind, if anything were to change in this report, I think a major success story is we fought to get these things in, and they are working. That would be a subtle change that we could possibly sort of incorporate into the report to turn that into a genuine success, as opposed to we just put the groins in. But again, I don't know, but that's the sort of thing that went through my mind as I was reading this. And that's something that I'll discuss with Donna and Hayden following the content. And remember those sorts of questions later.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so I think what was achieved, but the limitations or restrictions that were around many of us, but particularly the operational people in the organisation, was pretty much successful. It was basically, it was like business as usual, even in some very testing and trying times. So I think the work that people did and the way they went about doing what they do, I thought was commendable myself as a general comment to people, because a lot of people take a lot of things for granted and don't realise that a lot of people have to go a lot of extra miles to get where we got to. But yeah, Martin, you have a question?
Yeah, and just following up on Rob's point, I think it is, while we don't want to make it into a yay after great and fantastic, it's that whole sort of like in advertising, it's the feature and benefit. So yes, we've done the drawings, and what this has meant therefore is blah blah blah. Yes, we've done something else and that might not have been popular, and what this has meant is, and I think getting that sort of wording in is people say, oh, it's only semantics and stuff, but it's what people look at and they go, oh, I didn't realise that we were doing that because of
I think from my perspective, that flexible bay is one of those prime examples where the community grows. And if it wasn't for that community driving us, we would not be in this position where we could say one way or another. And that is where local government can really make those connections with communities. Whether we agree or disagree, we actually found a way through and we've come up with an outcome. And it's not whether it's a positive or negative. I think the process is more important sometimes than the actual outcome that we realise, even if it's positive or negative. But I think that's somewhere, sometimes we miss that opportunity to demonstrate that endeavour to be responsive to our communities, acknowledging that we can't always give people what they want.
And I think we were on, there was some councillors, I think, on some sort of tour, and we happened to pull up at that site, and there was a local down there tractor, and coming with the grinds, and we go, okay, local involvement.
I think we've got a few examples of that, though. We take parking and traffic management at on the beach. Those solutions are by and large community driven. And indeed, the people who went out in the white gloves and waved the traffic around were members of the community, they're volunteers. And so I think we're very closely with that to get what is a pretty workable outcome. On top of that, it's actually a revenue stream. So maybe we could highlight a bit more of that.
That's right. We make a statement in the document about the fact that we had so many submissions to our LTP, and it shows that our community really has. And there are examples in here where we have been responsible to that community that really cares, and we've actually achieved things because of that. And I think that's an important thing that we shouldn't miss.
In the welcome, acknowledging what we were talking about how much the staff and our contractors and staff have had to work through challenging times, we say pandemic has continued to impact the delivery of services and projects. A sentence in there about how the team has achieved things despite the challenges of COVID or something might be just an acknowledgement of people going extra mile. Well, that's right.
Exercise, I say that is largely the success of that has been the community. Yes, excellent leadership and stuff being done, but that's harnessed civilians. These are rate partners, and other ones have actually really made contributions. But without them, we simply would not even be close to where we are. And so I do think it's worthwhile mentioning this. Like these are people doing hours and hours and hours of this, who know their own patches and creeks and streams intimately. So again, like for me, we talk about how we're going as an organisation. Can't rule that bad. We've got those people actually willingly engaging. And not the people on our page obviously, but quite philosophically. Anyhow. Are there any other questions? Terry?
I've just got one on page 61 and it's to do with the remuneration. I just see it was 360,000 in 2020 and 387. That's a 27k increase. And, is that right? Is that how it's panned out?
Yeah, thanks, Terry. I've probably answered that.
That'd be good.
It's all about me. As a good employer, you would know where I've been in terms of my salary over the last few years, but I just want to re-emphasise that that was not a salary increase at all. So it's a combination of me taking some paid leaves and a payout for some leave that I didn't take because of the COVID first lockdown, so I had to pay up for a certain couple of weeks on that perspective. And the rest of the difference is actually the calculation around non-financial benefits, such as the vehicle that I have and that sort of thing. So just to clarify, June 2016, I started on the organisation, and it's now September 2021. I worked out that because I've effectively been on a pay freeze since that time, so I've actually had a 0.3% rate pay increase since 2016. So yeah, we've not really changed very much, which equates to $1,000 over that period of time. Is the only increase that I've been using from a salary perspective.
Okay.
Thank you, Rob.
Murray.
Can I just a question, and I can put it right in front of me, on council remuneration? I'm looking at those figures, our reimbursement of travel is included in that figure? Yes. Which I think reimbursement of travel, shouldn't, travelling up and on, shouldn't be included in remuneration because it's extra remuneration expense.
Yes.
And I think it gives a wrong impression to the regulators.
Yes, through the chair, I had raised that point with Audit New Zealand as well. Previously, we didn't include it, but we have been told we have to include it, that's part of the requirement of the legislation and of the disclosure that all costs need to be included.
Can you put a note at the bottom of it, like an asterisk saying people trip rural?
Could it be on a separate line then?
Right side, you were looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, I could talk all about it, but I think the disclosure is what it is. That has to look like that, but we could possibly put some information underneath that disclosure explaining it would be probably what my view would be on that.
I would feel better if it was something quite separately. It doesn't lie out on our own, but it's on the board.
I'm only raising it, so
Another the hot seat now, Rob.
another thing we spoke about where I have to disclose, what I get paid in my fee is disclosed, when I get paid for my travel and that, it's treated as an expense and not as like still subject to audit, but I don't see it as part of remuneration. I don't think you can argue that, because it's non-taxable.
Could I suggest, Tony, I mean, this would be, I hear the point, and we've got Carl here, and that it reflects that we probably have an obligation under the Remuneration Authority disclosures to include expenses, but why couldn't we have a column, have columns here for the 2021 figure being stipend or remuneration, and then a separate column with travel expenses or whatever we want to call it, expenses leading to that column total there that we have now under the 2021 actual. So Tony, if you're claiming expenses, you'd have your whatever your core stipend is. Second column would have your travel reimbursement, and that would come to a total of $77,000. I wouldn't see a problem with that. I'd be struggling to see how we could be challenged over that.
So, Carl, you put your hand up there?
Happy to ask the question, but I agree with Bruce in principle, so I can just confirm with the sector gurus if there's any violent objection to that, but it makes sense.
Can I ask a question? I thought the car was also available in the contract for the CEO to be able to use it for personal purposes as well. Am I wrong on that or right on that?
No, that's correct.
That's great.
Okay, any other? Hayley?
Through Chair, there's just one other area I just want to highlight, and that's rates receivable. I know we'll talk to this, to that one in risk quite often before about how we're working to improve that. And I just want to highlight that our closing position for 2021 is the best we've had since 2011, which is just shows that we really worked on our rates receivable in terms of getting them in, and we're on the year. Yeah, I think help. So
It's very,
I think it's affected the ideas and stuff too, so yeah, it's been constant improvement.
Just a quick one from me again. There's a loss on interest rates swaps. I think of about 2.7 mil.
Again, that's from that's from our blend and extend exercise. So basically, we had all our interest rates up here.
That's right.
Yeah, they got lower, and the balance sheet, the liability needed to be reduced.
Yeah, that's what I was checking that. So we've got an idea.
Got one way.
Yeah.
it's not.
I think I looked on the cash flow and it was kind of different way. Yeah.
But if there is no further discussion on this, I'll get someone else to move this.
Yeah, I'll second move that.
It's on the second that. Sally, all those in favour? Then it's carried. Thanks very much, Hayden.
Thanks for all the work.
Thanks, guys.
So Carl's joined us now, so we're going to item 2.1 on page 14. And we've been given today, I think. So, Carl, you able to join us?
Yes, Chair. Are we referring to the audit fee letter and the audit plan?
That's correct.
Yep. Okay. So, as you may or may not remember, we've signed audit engagement letter for the 3 financial years covering 30 June 2020, 30 June 2021, and 30 June 2022. And as we were ready to set our audit fees for last year, COVID struck. And we just, as Audit New Zealand and in consultation with the Auditor General, we limited our audit fee increases and issued a 1-year audit fee for last year. So this year, with the audit fee letter for the next 2 years, all we've done is we've kept the hours the same, but we've just brought the rates in line with what it would have been if we didn't limit it in the previous year. So that is just to cater for inflation and salary adjustments in terms of audit team and staff members.
So Donna, anything to add to Carol's comment?
No, we're presenting that is what it is, we're signing.
So we can't do any horse trading?
Yeah.
I'll move the resolution.
I know, Murray will second that. All those in favour? Okay. That's carried on. Thanks, Carl. You can disappear off your cup of cocoa now and listen.
Thanks, Chair. I've got one more. I've got my audit plan in there as well.
You want to talk about that now?
Chair, yes, if it suits the committee. We've issued the audit plan. In there, we've included the audit risks. As in previous years, the risk of management override remains an area of focus. So we'll concentrate our work on testing journals, reviewing accounting estimates, and looking for unusual and one-off transactions. As always, we also take a deep dive into the valuation of property, plant, and equipment. There where evaluations is performed, which where there were quite a few in Thames-Coromandel as in previous years. We also look at where management does a fair value assessment of the asset values to make sure that what they present in the financial statements doesn't materially differ from what the assets are worth. And then we also look at whether there's any impairment consideration. So that's where assets are worth less than what they were due to some conditions or actions that have happened to them. The last item of interest or focus there that we've got is is the Sugarloaf Wharf, where council became got an interest into the newly created entity. We've contacted our technical team to present the technical opinion that Donna and the team got from PwC to just have a look at that. For the current year, the impact is mainly disclosure related, as there were no transactions between the council and the entity. Then also we look at capital projects, including work in progress. We take a bit of a deep dive. We've always got an interest in those. On the three waters, still watching brief. We're just looking at this year. Well, we're looking at if there's any funding stimulus received to work on water. We'll have a look at that as part of the audit process. Then we also will look at shovel-ready funding that was received from the PGF, make sure that it's accounted for correctly. The rest of the plan appears similar in previous years. So if there's any suspected or alleged fraud, we look at what management does and how the council reacts to those. We've included the auditor process on page 8. Materiality is in there. So materiality is what we use to assess whether misstatements or errors in the financial statements will impact the reader's assessment of the financial statements. We've got those on page 9 and on page 10, as well as we've included the materiality for specific performance measures. You'll see there's a range of where we talk about percentages or whether it is a 0% report. So it's either where you've got consent, it's either done or not. Where you've got an abatement notice, it's either you achieved it or not. So there's not a lot of wriggle room in there, and that's why we set the materiality so low for those. We've got a timeline in there in our communication plan. So we've set up regular meetings with the team to talk through the audit. Also meet with the mayor and the CE as required at the beginning of the audit and the end of the audit to make sure that we are aware of all the risks and cover off any areas that they might be concerned about. We've put the audit timetable, and I think different to prior years, my team has arrived on site on, well, not on site, virtually on site on Monday. And as in the interim audit, we are using the audit dashboard to guide the audit. I don't know who's the biggest fan of it, Donna's team or my team yet. I think it's a tight competition, but it does seem to be working well. And then, Chair, I'll take questions if there's any questions on the document.
Yeah, I had a couple. So one was about the Arikitahi Sugarloaf audit. So you're only auditing council's part in that, or you're auditing the entity itself through via the council mechanism or council membership? So I'm aware that Arikitahi have asked the government to be the auditor for Arikitahi directly. So is this the mechanism by which government's doing that?
Thank you, Mayor, for the question. We have notified the Auditor General of the creation of a new entity. They have determined that, yes, the Auditor General will be its auditor. Before they assign an audit service provider like Audit New Zealand or any other entity, they have requested more information from the entity itself before deciding who will be the audit service provider. So that's a bit of a work progress. From our perspective, we audit the Thames-Coromandel's interest in the entity.
Okay. And then
provide just a little clarity on that. Well, it's purely around the accounting treatment.
Around the accounting treatment.
Yeah.
When it gets built over or when it gets demolished or built around. And so it has a certain value at the moment, and it's how we transfer that value through to the new owner. That's the issue.
And through the chair, there's two things. There's also our share in the entity.
Yeah.
How we account for that, and that is what is in the note and our annual report. which note it's in. But yeah, there is a disclosure in there.
Yeah, it's just
For that.
Yeah, so, okay, and then my next question around Three Waters one, is that just solely for the purposes of tracking the funding coming in? Because the big explanation just for that. So it's just making sure that we funding that we get in regard to the Three Waters appropriately, which obviously we're going to do, but
Yep, there's two aspects. One is tracking the funding, making sure that that's accurately accounted for and that there's no conditions that remain unfulfilled at year end, and you have to show a contingency or a, that you still it can be still taken back by central government if you haven't spent it according to the agreement. And the second part of it, there'll be a disclosure on the uncertainty in this regard in the accounting policy note. To say that government is still investigate or still to yet to announce what this is going to look like and when it's going to happen.
I wasn't aware that there were any conditions attached to the how we spent funding.
We've signed a funding agreement, I think, on the basis of the automated project, was that?
Yeah, but I didn't think there were conditions attached to how that money was spent.
There'll be a delivery plan attached to it, won't there, Rob and Bruce, which actually which effectively form the conditions. So I'm presuming until we've met the delivery plan, we hold it as revenue in advance.
It's all right. Thank you.
I just had a question on, it's just a semantic thing on page 6 when it's talking about fraud risk. This bullet point says, what role does it play in relation to fraud? Generally, that means what role does, well, actually, I don't know what it means. Power play?
Sorry, I didn't quite get the question there.
Yeah, so one of the bullet points, first bullet point on page 6 of the audit plan, sentence starts, what role does play?
Ooh, okay. No, that's just bad English.
Okay.
So it's not meant. We'll update that one. What role does council play in relation to fraud?
Very good.
Can I just ask my question? And look, it's just to confirm how our intended plans and sign off. It's a difficult year for everybody, but particularly for the audit environment to get things done with on time. As far as you're aware at this stage, there's no reason that we can't look forward to an audit opinion on the 15th of November.
Gee, that is a very difficult question to answer, but the short answer is no. Currently there's nothing saying that it's early days. I think once again, audit information delivery is critical and key. We've put a big emphasis on the team, and I think a lot of pressure is going to come to Donna's team over the next wee while when we're going to push out all possible information that we could require, as well as select the samples. So the flip side is when they're done, the pressure is on my team so that there's zero unproductive time, because we've got no capacity to deal with any lag of information or poor performing delivery of information. We just have got zero capacity at this stage to deal with that. But at this stage, everything is going well. We're meeting Donna's team on a daily basis. I've been to 2 or 3 of those to discuss any possible bottlenecks, if at all.
Can I ask, Donna, how it's going from your side?
Yes, through the chair.
Say your side, but how's it going from a council perspective?
We are prepared. The team are using the audit dashboard, which is turning out to be a really great tool for the exchange of documents, which is really obviously in this time we can't have auditors here, is crucial. Yeah, I have been to a couple of those meetings too, and nothing has been brought to my attention at the moment that we are behind with any of our delivery. So we will continue to deliver. We're all prepared, we've got the team waiting.
And I get it. And I
Well,
agree.
what's the downside risk? If we can't meet these dates, and I say we as in you and us, when do we get signed?
We see you back in 2022, Chair.
Yeah, so it would be in the new year, and you think that's what you're saying?
Yep.
Okay, so sorry, Tony, I know it's like extracting teeth to some extent, but I'm just trying to get that these dates are really critical for both our purposes, which is if we can't meet, we can't meet it, we're into 2022 before we get a signed off annual report. That's not healthy and for anybody.
Yeah, and I think the one aspect that is different this year from previous years is as the committee is sitting now, they've got the annual report. So Donna and the team has put in great effort to get that document done. That's something we usually get later in the audit. So we've got that from day one, so we can, you know, finish all the review processes on that as well as we're going along, and don't have to do that after we've sort of done the field work and the execution work.
Through the chair, I just had one question, Carl. We did speak about this at some point. I just wanted to understand where we are with it. And that is, you did talk to me about another thing that could hold the audit up were other audits as well. You know, like depending on when, like the bigger councils were being audited, that could also impact on the timing of our audit. Is that sort of tied down now, or is that still an issue?
Chair, we've got our through you, Chair, we've got our resources locked in, Donna. So we're there for the period, unless I've got unplanned sicknesses or alert level raises, or who knows at this stage. Then we should be good.
Okay, great, thank you.
I think from my part, I think Donna and Hayden and your team, you know, you're obviously well organised and well structured and actually in front of the game. That you know, this is out and for having that available on day one has been an enormous help. So I think, you know, for me, I recognise that behind the scenes to get this here, it's an awful lot of other work and good process behind the scenes, because without that, we might be having quite a different discussion. So that's from my comment, and I don't know if you endorse that, Bruce, but that's my general feeling.
Yeah, look, I'm very comforted by the draft annual report I've seen. So, and Carl, you've mentioned that as a plus. So well done to Donna and the team, and hopefully that gives you guys a good basis to react and to pursue the audit. And I think in the long run we should be quite positive about that indeed, and also in Carl's way in which he's tried to make certain there are resources there. So you know, we need a fair wind, and I suspect it's going to be now externalities to the audit process that will affect us, rather than either the efforts of Donna and the team, or indeed at this stage Carl and his team. So that's minimised our risk environment, if you can put it that way, and we'll just have to keep a close monitoring. So I'm very, very impressed you guys are meeting daily just to make certain logistically things are ticking over. So that's a good sign, Tony.
Yeah, Chris. And yeah, I'd like to make sure that recorded in some way, because we've got quite slow to recognise the good things that go on behind the scenes and get pretty quickly on the audit. So, okay, well, with that in mind, I'll move the resolution. With Steve,
Stephen.
And Chair seconds that. All those in favour? Aye. It's carried. So thanks very much, Carl. You're most welcome to spend the rest of your morning listening in, but I'm sure you've got more important things to do. We get to item 4.3 on page 37 of your Treasury update, and Hayden, you're still in the seat.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get this out of the way. And it's not us talking about my chair.
I'm not worried.
We're probably going to have to keep going, just have to come carefully rather than stop. So right now,
must be a new chair.
well, you'll have your cup of coffee, Bruce. You're right. You probably have some people who don't have a seat.
Happy to keep going, Mr. Chair.
Take the report as read. We've got an external debt position at the moment of an Lgfa of 73 million. With 6 of that as pre-funding, so we've borrowed it in advance and put it on term deposit, and it's for debt that's maturing in April, and that was the advice sort of given by PwC. With interest rates at the moment, it's better to kind of lock them in. Probably the other thing that they're looking at is we did a blend and extend exercise. They're just looking if there's any other interest rate swaps that they might take advantage of that. Now, most of our swaps are pretty good, except we've got probably one that's in the fives, like fives that probably could come down to 3 or 4, spread it out. Because at the moment there is an indication that interest rates are going to get a lot wrong for themselves to rise. So, yeah, it's sort of where we're at.
Do you have any questions in regard to this? Would like to have clarify? No.
Oh,
Yes.
can I ask a question, please, Tony? Hayden, just again, very helpful, and it was great to have that session with PW last meeting, so that hopefully for all of us, including myself, we're much more au fait with the nature of the reporting that you're putting through, which is really good. I was just reflecting on page, is it 40 of the agenda, which is the debt forecast scenario, that given the way we have approached our financial management in the last year, probably our 80% line, that yellow or golden line, is more likely to be our debt track at the moment, or do you think it's going to be at the higher level?
Yeah, I think 80% is still where we're working towards.
I mean, that does have ultimately some impact on our forecast interest costs going forward. In other words, it's going to be lower, I presume. The other thing that I noted on the next page was our average cost of funds is 3.05%. Now, I haven't looked at the prior reports, but my presumption is that over time has been trending down as our debt rolls over and we bring into bear new instruments and our treasury management approach. I take it that is trending down. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was in the fours and fives probably 2 years ago, probably a year ago. It was the fours, and it's been 3. Yeah, just over 3.
And that again will give rise to some favourable variances, hopefully, in terms of the forecast position. It certainly helped us in the last year when you look at the finance costs. One other thing that I just wanted to check on the next page, the interest rate risk profile. If I have read this correctly, some of our positions are at or below the minimum level. Yes. In terms of being fixed. That is being corrected, I take it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, we're working with PwC on that at the moment. There's probably 2 options: either blend and extend, probably, and pushing out, or a new swap. They're sort of working out what's the best way forward, just to get us back into compliance.
Brilliant. Okay, and that'll be done within the next month, sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just want to reflect that. At the moment we're sitting here as a risk committee with a level of potential. Let's in terms of our prudence limits, non-compliance. So it's important to see that we've got a pathway to getting those fixed. So take on board your point, Hayden. That's really helpful. Thanks, Tony. Those are my questions.
Through the chair, I also just want to get onto what Bruce was just talking about with the interest rate risk profile. We also sometimes look at that over and think that at this time, or what we know that's happening with reward reform and things like that, it might not necessarily be the right thing to do to keep things compliant. So we measure that up with, and when we have our discussions, we have some quite robust discussions with PwC around what our compliance means and what it should look like. And we do talk about the fact that So we don't just do interest rate swaps or go into these deals, but so we can stay in compliance, because it might not necessarily be the right thing to do, because the compliance is based around our own treasury management policy. So there is a lot of discussion that goes on that Hayden and I have with PwC every month around that. So sometimes you will find that there might be some things that do sit out of compliance. And with the interest rate risks, just wanted to explain that.
Yeah, I get that, Donna, and I think that's a really good point.
And why, and it's not, I'll tell you, it's a approach, because always got myself into making some average decisions as opposed to having the flexibility to make good decisions. So,
That's right.
I mean, say if we move outside of whatever our rules and regulations are, policy, we do record it and report it. And do it have to be retrospectively to do it right. So I'm happy with that person. Martin.
So the debt forecast scenarios on page 40. So presumably the number 2 is if we achieve 80% of long-term plan.
Yeah.
Then, and then, so should there actually be like a 4th line, which would be LTP at 80% excluding water, because presumably that's that 80 million gap, because we would lose.
You could. Yeah, I guess you could have another line. Yeah,
Right.
50 million.
I'm not suggesting you do, I'm just wanting to clarify.
So what are you saying about losing debt?
Oh, no, I think, right, so if we,
Martin, I'll have a Martin's word.
so there's the third line is if we were, well, if 3 Waters was to happen, we would lose 3 Waters debt, we drop to 50 million. Yeah, 24.
They're actually to take it over, the debt goes with it. Will they risk it?
I don't think it
So then
is.
we've got to look at all our financial.
It's gonna,
Okay.
But all the income goes as well.
Yeah.
The government takes the debt,
Or the entity takes the debt, not the government. Yeah.
Not technically.
But for some reason, I thought they weren't going to come to the debt. Anyway.
Well, they're not going to reimburse us, they're just going to pay the
And we don't get a credit.
the asset.
There's that cover. It will be.
Yeah, it's indexed to the intake.
So they're going to cover the internal debt?
Yes.
Oh, that's okay. Oh, yeah.
Or just transfer it.
Perhaps the key issue is our community doesn't lose the debt, it's still got to pay it. It's just through a different part.
That's no free, mate.
I've long ago closed my ears to the rhetoric that was coming out, so.
they're not going to go off questions on, public from. But they haven't, I'll move that, we receive this report, we have a seconder. Murray, all those in favour?
Aye.
That's carried. So now item 4.4 is debtors payment, and you get the privilege again.
I'll take the report as read.
I'm having a move resolution.
I'll check that. Well, no. Is there any comment or question behind about this report? Things carry on going in the right direction in this area, so it's all good news.
Yeah, from my perspective, through the chair, if it's okay, I just wanted to give credit to the people that worked really hard, juniors especially, between fire, and you'll have noticed in the report that we've significantly reduced our long term debt, so it's very counting the actual figures, I think came down from about 8. So, yeah, a real good effort to agree with.
And again, this has been very close. Debtors or so we've been talking about 10 years ago, and we're talking a lot less about it now. Right, so I'll, we have a minute, we have. Okay, so all those in favour of this report? Aye. Yeah. That's carried. Right, yeah, so now. Item 4.5 on page 47 is the request to reduce the.
Thanks, Pete.
Tone.
Yeah, that's a solution, right?
Well, we're only at the stage that we're asking to move to, yeah, so instead of moving, we'll receive the report. And Terry seconded it, so now,
Yeah, what risk to council is there the meaning of reducing that? Let's say a tsunami comes through there tomorrow, except the marina. What risk have we got? What are we exposed to?
Then we wouldn't have anything.
No, it's all there. It's all there. That's all I need to know. There's no risk. There's no risk to us.
Pretty uncommon too, it's $50 million.
Just need to ask the question so I can sleep tonight.
Okay, got it.
So John, you're online, I do believe. Have you got any comments you'd like to add to this for us? John there, or is it John?
Sorry, are you, John?
John, I was just asking in respect of the request to reduce the liability insurance of the Whangatā Marina Society.
Yes.
I think for us, it is reasonably clear and easy to understand, and it looks, at least to me, that is a fair recommendation. Have you got any other comment?
Not really, Mr. Chairman, but certainly inquiries through both sets of brokers acting for both the Marina Society and for Council have both said that the $10 million is a normal industry standard in New Zealand and is perfectly adequate to protect us.
Right. And Bruce, do you have any comment on this?
No. Look, I'm comfortable. The critical thing really here is the reduced amount. Most likely, is to cover, will it cover our most likely probable loss event, or rather the society's most likely probable event? My assumption is from these papers that is the case, so I'm very comfortable with the change.
Yeah.
Just that one, if there's any way Rob can answer this in just a single sentence, please. What sort of events does that insurance cover? Is that like if someone runs their boat into the... I mean, it's not going to cover a tsunami type.
Yeah. The single sentence I would have is I wouldn't have the foggiest idea to be honest. I'm sure John would have the answer to that.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, you know, these things, insurance is all about risk management. So someone who owns the $2 million yacht parked in the marina will have their own insurance against cover for damage to their property and to the marina's assets. And when you look at the marina, the asset itself is predominantly the pontoons and piers that they have. When the original 50 million was there, it was, you know, we were talking about raw bare land that was developed, there'd have been lots of machinery, lots of things going on, more chances of risk. So the marina operators one was the one that our insurance broker was most concerned about, to ensure that it covered liabilities that were not covered by the standard wording of most risk insurance covers for public liability. So I think it's in order, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure I've answered your question properly, but
No, yeah.
Move the resolution.
Okay, so will you second for that? Terry? Yep. All those in favour?
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
Carried. Rightio. The next item is 4.6 on page 50, which is in relation to the hand charges. So, who we got up there with? Judy.
Good morning.
Righto. Righto.
Thank you very much.
Read. And now, question, I've got a couple myself later on, but the other people go first.
Want to make sense, trying to make it easy.
Yeah, my comment is it makes it easy too. But I come back to, I don't know that everyone pays, schools for instance, they have a lot of them, but they don't. So if we I'll just take a rugby club, and I'll take the one at home, the majority of people that use that rugby club are Wellington residents. So either use your own pen at home, not at home.
Yeah.
Nothing actually increases in terms of treatment or cost. What does cost is the cost of the infrastructure to get that from one place to another place. So sometimes I wonder, because these come up all the time, and there's people who look at community grants to pay them, rather than pay themselves. The one part of it is why have them at all? Or we have to just go on this line, and have it as simple as it can be. So, yeah, that was my comment, what that was worth. Because why have it when the only time we had capacity is when people are in town from our area. And it's the cost of the minister greater than what we receive.
But they're reducing it to one pen charge, aren't they?
That's the aim.
So that makes it equal everywhere. So I think it makes sense to me as one pen charge.
Yeah, so through the chair, the purpose of the report is just to try and, it's looking at the fairness and equity aspect, I think, of, you know, of the community supporting groups and other non-profit organisations that are providing a service to the community, who are required to pay rates, and because they do have all these additional facilities in there, they do get hit quite hard with those pay charges. You could argue that it's exactly the same for a business that has multiple charges, but the difference, I guess, between that is that that is a business, and whereas this is providing service to the community. So that's what this report is coming and asking you for under that miscellaneous purposes policy.
Right. So we will.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
Yeah. We'll have it.
I'm happy to move it.
So you're moving 1 and 2?
Yep.
Very good, Sally.
And a second.
Really?
Yeah,
I'll be there.
Right, so we remove the receipt of report, we've removed that we're approving the remittances.
Very good.
Aye.
Against? We've got a new way of managing our hand charges.
That's good.
Right, we get now to 4.7, which is members' reports, and you want to go first here?
Yeah, just the what's going on around the government on these issues, and it's really pleased that we can get Rex to come and speak to our locals and talk to them and keep up to date. So where we are, it's all about that. So that's me.
Yep, I have also here we had Rex round, great conversation about the community board, very enlightening, and you'll leave it at that.
No, thank you.
Bruce, just on the next line as we go around the tables.
Yes, thank you. Look, I think actually our agenda today has probably covered the key things that I could offer from the sector, which is actually how do we get our annual report out in time, and I think we've covered that well. That we've got through Donna and her team a good process in place. So so well done on that. And the other thing which actually is clearly coming through is but it's not even post-COVID, but the effects of COVID. And Rob, you've covered that well in terms of staff well-being. And Sandra, you raising issues. Are we as governors making it easy for staff as well? So they are probably the significant issues that are coming through at this stage. I think, quite frankly, the big issues, which we already have in a strategic risk issue of Three Waters, future of local government and RMA reform, you guys are probably as well informed on that as I am. I would note, if you chose to, the future of local government has put out its summary paper from its initial work, which is pretty high level from my quick read of it. But it may be something that Tony, the committee, might like to have circulated, just to at least know where Jim Palmer's independent panel is going. That exists at this stage. It's attainable. Thank you.
Fair enough. Yeah, so is that you, Bruce?
Yeah, it's being released. The report released by the minister.
Yeah.
It is really just a summary of the issues. None of them, I think all of them look familiar, but it does reflect perhaps some of the direction it's going to focus on prior. I mean, it's got another couple of years to run, but the areas that it's going to focus on, and I think it's always valuable for us to be informed. So, yeah, I would just make that recommendation, Tony, that staff circulate it to you folks so you can be aware of the direction of travel.
Don's got that lined up and organise that for us. Gary.
Hello.
Sorry.
David, how are you going?
Nishant is on my team. I'll tell him to mute.
Were you talking to me, Tony?
Yeah, no, I said for Mem's report, but so your one right next to mine.
I have to say I've been struggling quite a bit. There's been very hard to hear a lot of the speakers, but I mean, yeah, for my report, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Nothing for me.
Nothing from him.
Well, nothing for me, again, for myself, most of the meetings and things like that involve water. I raised something that like three people was talking about last night, and it's really, I think this is what has gone into a magazine, where I haven't got the thing in front of me, it sort of says, TCDC sign up for three waters, because three waters is this generic term that every council, and I'm engaged with these people one-on-one and meeting in rooms now, I'm second reading on Facebook without refuting it. So, three waters has been around forever. We've always talked about waters, three waters, that's a generic term. The government's talking about the same thing, but we're forming it. So I just think we need to think before we send stuff out that Joe public who read this, what are they going to think this is signed up to the three governments water reform or not? And make a very clear differentiation. And I think the other comments I had sort of on the text simple, which I said 2 to 1. We will understand it, but when the headline is where it's $50 million for swimming pool and tent, people are with the animal up around and say, well, bloody hell, we got PBF and still do, you know. So I'm going to say that quite a different discussion. So I just think we're just going to be more accurate on what we send out and think about someone in Primer 6 reading it as opposed to someone with a PhD. It's just a general comment because I know other people had phone calls too. But if people are reading it up, it's because they didn't understand it. They've got a good reason to do that. And we could have probably done better to make a differentiation between what the big issue is and what it isn't. But anyway,
I don't think you can do much better with trying to explain the current situation we've got ourselves in regard to three waters. It's very difficult for people to understand the legislative control.
When the first sentence says signed up three waters, it didn't actually say that was the first tranche to say we want to be at the table talking about this. So we're going to sign up for that, and we'll take $5 million and we'll invest that into improving water. So that's all good. That's a very different discussion than the three waters reform. That is what people are excited about. Don't worry about bloody water anymore. But anyway, that's enough for me. Okay, so someone to move. We will stand event reports. Sally and Martin. All those in favour? Aye.
I'll move to go into minutes.
All right. We'll have the minutes